one of the most impressive things. There's a lot of people that write tweet threads and they get great engagement. They get, a ton of people commenting, retweeting, liking it. I think one of the things that impressed me the most about you, you'll do like a one-off tweet and like over 1,000 people will like it. Like
Yeah.
your audience is like engaged. They're like really plugged into everything you do. And I think
Yeah.
even when I think about building this podcast, it's like, how do I get that loyal audience that like really fucks with you? And
Yeah.
I'm curious, how did you develop that? Like why do you think that they do that with you?
Yeah. So this is where building a brand is different than gaining followers. So with a brand, there's a lot that comes into it and a lot more that I don't understand that I'm still trying to figure out. But it's all part of the journey. But so what a lot of people screw up is there's like different pillars. So this is the way I look at it with like a Twitter brand that's applicable to other things. So there's three pillars. So there's the growth. So that's like the basic tweets, the stuff that like a lot of people like generic. There's the personal stuff. So that's like in your 20s, the thread I wrote about my life, my views, my stories, stuff like that. And then there is authority. So that's giving value, like copywriting tips, writing tips, marketing tips. And when you combine the three, that's when you build a brand. You build the foundations for a brand. So you tweet the personal stories, stuff like that, opinions. That creates relatability. So that makes the person feel like they know you. Feels like you're a friend now because you align with their views. Then you tweet the authority to give value. So if I'm giving you value all the time, my perceived level of value in your eyes is higher. So because you perceive me as more relatable and you perceive me as high value because I'm giving you this value, when I tweet the growth tweets, like the basic tweets, you're gonna like that. You're gonna retweet it, all that stuff because you're like, oh, that's good stuff. Like, say if uh, a math teacher or some kind of like professor, like someone of like high self claimed authority tweets like, oh, drink water. Oh, okay, no, this is a good one. Okay, so for a doctor, he says vaccines work or whatever. I won't get into the politics of it, or like this medicine works. um, but then some homeless guys like, oh, that vaccine sucks, or like, or this vaccine works, or whatever. You're going to trust the doctor because he has more value, more perceived status, all of that stuff, and maybe even like him better. You're going to trust his opinion, or you're going to like his stuff better than some random person just spewing random opinions. So that's the way I look at it. And just like posting vulnerable shit, man. Like I've posted a lot of shit where I was scared to post it, what people thought of me, and that's the core. Like you're telling people that you stand for something. Like this is who I am. I don't give a fuck what you think of me, or maybe you do, but
Mhm.
you're gonna do it anyways. That's a brand. Like Nike, that's a brand because they're very specific of like who this is for. This is for athletes. Same with like the Colin Kaepernick like stuff. They stood for something there, and that's how
Mhm.
they created that diehard loyalty. But you think about I don't know, like a Motel 8 or like a Hyatt or something. Like no one really like looks at that and like, oh yeah, like this is my kind of place. It's like, oh, it's like
Yeah.
just generic brand. So if you're treating generic stuff, it's just like supply and demand. So much generic stuff, like you're just not valued because every I can go look at some other Twitter account and then I'm getting the same shit. But if
Mhm.
I go to Calum's Twitter and I see he's posting all this like stuff like, this is my story, this is do this to increase your podcast conversions, get traffic to your podcast, stuff like that. You're like, oh, that is for me. I identify, like, I like this guy. I identify with his brand. I want to be part of this. So that's like at the core, like that's brand building. And I think that's like something a lot of people screw up. So like you see these people, they're growing like a shit ton of followers, but how many of those followers are going to buy your stuff? How many of those followers actually give a shit about you? I would argue these are big accounts with like 200,000 plus followers. Like they're not making many sales because they're not
Yeah.
showing their authority. They're not doing this or that. So that's like a really big part of brand building is like those three pillars.
Yeah. No, that's so good, man. And it's interesting. Even I'll have conversations with like my parents or like friends, family about this. Even as I'm growing my pod, which is like authenticity is everything in content creation nowadays. Like
Mhm.
being vulnerable, being genuine. And it's funny, even what you were saying, because I've had a similar thing where it's like the stuff that I was scared to post was always the best performing content. It was always
Yeah,
when I was there, like my finger like twitching over the post button.
exactly. And it goes ties back to like that tweet, like take risk in your 20s. Like even if you're like later on in life, like take risk. Like it's exactly like posting content. Like you feel that discomfort, but you need to lean into that. And that's what grows you.